My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
All right, the last thing that I wanted to go over today was a quote by Solzhenitsyn. Because as I watch the unrest going on in Sri Lanka, that's a new one that's happening out there. And of course, the continuing problem between the Ukraine and Russia. And I've been watching a lot of videos about why these things are happening. And of course there's others around the world as well, conflagrations. And try to figure out why human beings are like this and why these things continue to happen. And according to Solzhenitsyn, it's purposeful. Because in order to keep you under control, there must be something that you're afraid of. He says, a constant state of war only serves as an excuse for domestic tyranny. Our government is looking to send another $30+ billion to the Ukraine. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's not. I'm not here to judge. I think what Putin is doing, he's convinced the Russian people that, just as he did back in Solzhenitsyn's day. Remember, Solzhenitsyn was a Ukrainian who was sent to a Russian gulag. And it was the constant state of war that allowed the Soviet Union to control all of the countries that they had conquered in order to create their union by force rather than by choice. And it was only the constant state of war that continued to allow Russia, as the core of the Soviet Union, to control the Ukraine as it is today. Only that constant state of war allows for domestic tyranny. And of course, people in Russia think that they're free citizens, and they have spoken up against the conflict only to disappear. To where? Who knows? Were they just shuttled off to be kept quiet somewhere? A modern day gulag where they're not allowed to make TikTok videos and talk about how they support the Ukraine's independence. I think I've said before, people always say to me, Tom, you were in the military. How can you be so anti-war? And my response is, it's because I was in the military. War is only a last resort, in my opinion. when there's no other way to solve a conflict. And I just am disgusted seeing the pictures of dead bodies laying in the street, and wish I could do something more to help. But I know that Putin needs a constant state of war in order for him to stay in power and control. I also know that to be a fact for most of the governments of Europe. They need somebody to be at war. I know that our elites need a constant state of war in order to continue to transfer wealth from the lower and middle class on up to them. And if you don't know that that's a thing, better do some reading and thinking. Get that critical thinking cap on. Because that's what war has become. That's what most things have become. Look at the transfer of wealth that happened over the last couple of years, where you don't have to believe what the origins of COVID were or anything, but the use of something like COVID in order to transfer wealth has been so significant during the last couple of years. Is the largest transfer of wealth from the lower and middle class to the elites, whatever you want to call them, that has ever happened in the history of humankind, human society. The largest transfer of wealth ever. We've gone from less than $2 a gallon of gas to $5. Not because there's any less petroleum being pumped out of the ground. That hasn't changed. Shipping maybe is a little more difficult. Maybe tapping into future reserves has been impacted. But in reality, nothing much has changed. And yet, over 2 years ago, gas was less than $2 a gallon, and it's close to $5. Why? And you see it not just in petroleum products, you see it in food at the grocery store. Why? And I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but why have the vastly wealthy people been buying up farms and farmland and real estate around the world? Why? Why have so many production plants for food and necessities suddenly burned? And the insurance companies look at it on an amortization chart, and it's so much higher. I mean, there's always factory problems and things like that, and things that happen that cause fires and whatnot, but it's so far above the curve. And why? Something's happening out there. These, whether it's a war, whether it's a disease, whether it's food, whether it's energy, by causing issues, it allows those in power to transfer wealth and stay in power. Who better to look to than Solzhenitsyn on ideas like this? They keep us in a constant state of what's the word I'm looking for? Now I can't even think of a word. Of angst, of worry, of concern, because they know as long as we are there, we are under control. As long as they balance it, right? You got just enough money, just enough freedom, just enough whatever in order to not rise up. However, some areas have been unable to continue that balance. And that's what is happening in Sri Lanka right now, where they just have had enough and they decided to overthrow their government, and their leadership had to flee the country out of fear. Now, I don't know if what the Sri Lankans will create will be any better than what they had before. Who knows, right? But they knew that those that were currently in power were stealing. They had all the proof in the world. Transferring wealth. Making themselves superior. It's scary. Anyway. If you haven't read the Gulag Archipelago, you've got to do it. If you think that the things that go on the news are real, or that the decisions that are being made for us as a people are for the betterment of us as a society, or that your religious leadership is doing so and making decisions out of piety, man, please start reading. Get those raw materials. As Locke said, do that critical thinking. As Socrates talked about. Remember, Melville said, hey, unless you know everything, you know nothing. Which, of course, the corollary to that is, the more you know, the more you move towards the everything, the less you're kind of ignorant inside of the anything. Right? Please, for your sake, our sake, everybody's sake, educate yourself. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. And I hope that you will like and share and subscribe. I mean, please, the biggest thing is share with people. Get them thinking. Anyway, And that's all I got to say about that. I'll chat with you later. Bye.